Walmart had another good quarter, and I think that it's very easy to attribute a lot of their success to just the value-seeking behavior of consumers in this environment. But I think that would also be overlooking a lot of the investments they've made in things like convenience that is really spurring the e-commerce growth, and that was really a notable takeaway from today's earnings release.
Yeah, that e-commerce aspect helps draw in higher income shoppers. So it's a larger pool of customers that Walmart now has access to. And in our Bloomberg News reporting, we indicate that the digital offerings now include luxury items like pre-owned Chanel bags. I had no idea that that kind of stuff was available on Walmart.com.
Well, Walmart has done a lot to really expand its marketplace, and that includes bringing in items that, will appeal to that higher income consumer. And the tactic behind all of this is that the more people are integrated with e-commerce in going to stores, they become sticky and they become loyal customers. So that when the macroeconomic backdrop fades, it really increases Walmart's ability to hang on to these customers going forward. And that just drives future growth. So it's a really interesting play out of how they're applying that tactic.
Jen, I also want to get your take on Walmart transferring its listing to the NASDAQ. That's going to happen on December 9th. And that, of course, is to reflect its focus on being a tech-forward company. But I'm wondering, how much of this is really just about being included in the NASDAQ 100 and therefore the QQQ ETF?
Oh.
Yeah, there's certainly part of that, Scarlett, where, that's probably part of the motivation. I think that there is, obviously there's a perception with regards to being perceived more as a tech company, which Walmart, in all truthfulness, has evolved into a tech company, especially amongst other retailers, by being listed at NASDAQ. Long term, maybe it helps their valuation, just in terms of having that perception of being more aligned with peers. Amazon is listed on NASDAQ. Things like that. So I think that there's a lot of those components together, combined, are really behind the move.
Jen, nobody arguably has a better finger on the pulse of the consumer than Walmart. What are they saying these days?
Actually, they seem relatively optimistic. They talk about, spending holding steady for kind of that middle-income consumer. High-end consumers seem to be spending pretty freely. A little bit of concern about some of the lower-end consumer, but it does seem to be sort of evening out. And so when they were looking forward to the holiday season, which is the most important thing with regards to the retailers that I cover, they seem cautiously optimistic that there will be a pretty good holiday season this year. We do think that people will prioritize spending on kids. That's usually what happens first if they're holding back in other parts of their budget. But all indicators right now seem that we're headed towards a reasonably solid holiday season.
Jen, we tend to look at Walmart as a shortcut for the consumer, but if this strong performance is really more a result of strategy and execution over the longer term, how much of a read does it really provide on the state of consumer spending beyond the fact that Walmart has become this exceptionally well-run tech-forward company? You just look at Target, for instance, which has a lower outlook.
No, it's a good point, Scarlett. I think the thing is that nearly every household has some sort of interaction with Walmart during the course of a year, whether it's in terms of frequency or not. And so Walmart has really evolved their ability to capture data about the customers that are spending in stores, even though they don't have a formal loyalty program. And so they really do have that insight into sort of the motivations behind customers, where they stand. I think one of the interesting things with regards to just focus and discipline, Walmart talked today about apparel sales, and their comparable sales for apparel was up 5% every month of the third quarter. And when you contrast that to Target, who reported yesterday, they're still struggling with some of their discretionary categories. So it seems to be a story of execution and not only the consumer spending where they are.